the quiet regulatory shift of 2026. We are currently witnessing a monumental shift in the American driving landscape. As we have moved into 2026, 10 major driving laws have quietly gone into effect, many of which are already being enforced with rigorous precision. Most drivers are operating under the dangerous assumption that the rules of the road are static. But the reality is that if you are driving the same way you did just 1 year ago, you could already be in violation of federal or state mandates. Surveys indicate that over half of all drivers are completely unaware that these changes even exist, creating a significant gap between public knowledge and legal enforcement. As a professional analyst, I must emphasize that "I didn't know" is not a valid legal defense. People are being pulled over and fined hundreds of dollars right now for rules that changed without traditional public warning campaigns. The high cost of ignorance. The danger of these 2026 updates lies in their silent implementation. There were no mass market alerts or letters sent to households to warn that enforcement was about to begin. Meanwhile, police departments nationwide have not waited for a grace period. They are actively enforcing these rules during routine traffic stops. This proactive enforcement means that for many, the first time they learn about a new law is while they are receiving an expensive citation on the side of the road. We are seeing penalties so steep that a single mistake can significantly impact a household's financial stability for the entire year. To avoid these surprises, we must deconstruct these laws one by one, looking at the technical requirements and the specific actions drivers must take to remain compliant. Law 1. The new federal distracted driving standard. The first major change is perhaps the most impactful because it is a federal standard with zero wiggle room: the new handheld device ban. Starting in January 2026, the threshold for what constitutes distracted driving has been lowered significantly. The core of the rule is simple: if a police officer sees a phone in your hand while the vehicle is in motion, it is an automatic violation. This applies regardless of the circumstances, whether you are stopped at a red light, crawling through heavy traffic, or merely checking directions for a split second. If you are in the driver's seat and the car is on, the phone must not be in your hand. Redefining hands-free and the speakerphone loophole. Many drivers believe they have found a clever workaround by using the speakerphone while holding the device near their face. However, under the 2026 law, this does not count as hands-free. The legal definition is now very specific. Hands-free means the device must be mounted or integrated into the vehicle's internal system. If the device is in your hand at any point, it is legally considered handheld use. The financial consequences are immediate. A first offense starts at a $250 fine, which doubles for the second offense. Beyond the ticket, every violation adds points to your license, ensuring that your insurance company will notice, often leading to rate increases that cost far more than the initial citation. Law 2. Strategic highway logistics and right lane usage. The second law is causing widespread confusion on highways because it requires a shift in how drivers position their vehicles during peak traffic hours. In 2026, more than 20 states have adopted a new right lane usage rule for multi-lane highways. On roads with 3 or more lanes, the far right lane is now designated primarily for through traffic only during rush hours. This means that if you are cruising in the right lane and do not plan to exit within the next couple of miles, you are legally expected to move into the center or left lanes. The intent is to keep the right lane clear to facilitate smoother merging and prevent bottlenecks at on-ramps. Navigating rush hour constraints. Where drivers are frequently failing this new highway standard is in the timing. In most jurisdictions, this rule does not apply 24/7. It is strictly enforced during defined morning and evening rush hours, which vary depending on local regulations. Outside of these peak times, the right lane functions as it always has. However, during those designated windows, officers are enforcing the rule aggressively, with fines typically ranging from $150 to $300. Drivers who remain in the right lane during rush hour without a pending exit are essentially setting themselves up for a completely avoidable ticket. Law 3. Transparency in speed. Camera enforcement. The third law actually offers a level of protection for drivers, provided they understand their rights regarding speed cameras. As these automated systems have proliferated, several states have passed legislation in 2026 requiring clear advanced warning signs before a driver enters a speed camera zone. In most regions, this now requires visible signage placed at least 500 feet before the camera. This law shifts the focus from revenue generation back toward public safety, ensuring that drivers have a fair opportunity to check their speed before being recorded. The power to challenge camera citations. Because of this new transparency mandate, drivers now have a legitimate path to challenge tickets if the proper warnings were not provided, if a sign was missing, obscured by trees, or blocked by construction at the time of the alleged violation. The ticket may be dismissed. Analysts have noted that in the first months of 2026, hundreds of tickets have already been thrown out because cities failed to update their signage to meet the new 500-foot requirement. If you receive a camera ticket in the mail, it is professionally advised to return to the location, document the lack of proper signage with photos, and file a contest with the local traffic court. Law 4. The most expensive mistake: emergency yielding. We now come to the rule that is catching the most drivers off guard: the mandatory emergency vehicle yielding procedure. This is not just a stricter version of the old rule. It is a specific step-by-step protocol that many drivers are failing to follow. When an emergency vehicle approaches with lights or sirens, you must move to the right and come to a complete stop. Simply slowing down or rolling forward while the vehicle passes is no longer sufficient and is technically a violation of the 2026 standard. The 200-foot rule and secondary accidents. The specific detail that most drivers miss is the mandatory waiting period. You are now required to remain completely stopped until the emergency vehicle has fully passed and is at least 200 feet ahead of you before you begin moving again. On a highway, 200 feet is roughly 4 to 5 car lengths, or about 2/3 the length of a football field. Lawmakers implemented this because drivers re-entering traffic too quickly were causing secondary accidents with other vehicles or the emergency responders themselves. Failing this rule is a $500 mistake that often includes mandatory traffic school, as officers are actively watching for drivers who move too soon. Law 5. Infrastructure compliance, EV charging spots. The fifth law reflects the changing technology on our roads, specifically regarding electric vehicle, EV infrastructure. In 2026, many cities have made it officially illegal to park in an EV charging spot unless the vehicle is actively charging. This goes beyond just keeping internal combustion cars out of these spots. It applies to EV owners as well. Even if your car is plugged in, once the battery reaches a full charge, you are on the clock. Managing the grace period and sensor enforcement. Most jurisdictions now allow only a short grace period, usually 10 to 15 minutes, for a driver to move their vehicle after charging is complete. After that window, you can be ticketed for occupying the space. Enforcement has become increasingly sophisticated, with some stations utilizing sensors that automatically notify parking enforcement the moment a car finishes its charge. Fines typically start around $100 but can climb in high-demand areas. To avoid this, drivers are encouraged to utilize their vehicle's charging notifications or set a personal timer to ensure they vacate the spot immediately upon completion. Law 6. The expansion of school zone enforcement. The sixth law is causing significant friction because it dramatically expands the window of time during which school zone rules apply. Historically, school zones were enforced during narrow morning and afternoon windows. However, in 2026, many states have expanded these hours to cover before-school programs, after-school activities, and extended pickup times. In some areas, this means active enforcement can run from as early as 6 a.m. to as late as 6 p.m. Doubled fines and criminal charges. The financial and legal stakes in these expanded zones have never been higher. Fines for speeding in a school zone have effectively doubled, often starting at $500 with mandatory points on your license. In certain states, going more than 15 miles per hour over the school zone limit can now be charged as a criminal offense rather than a simple traffic violation. This shift was driven by sobering data showing that accidents involving children often occur outside of traditional school hours during extracurricular activities. If you see a school zone sign in 2026, the safest professional advice is to assume the flashing lights are active and slow down immediately. Law 7. The digital witness, dash cam rights. The seventh law deals with the rights of drivers to record their surroundings using dash cams and other devices. In 2026, several states passed laws that explicitly protect a driver's right to record interactions with police during traffic stops. This means you generally cannot be penalized just for having a camera active in your vehicle. This footage can be an invaluable tool for defending yourself in court or challenging an unfair citation. Privacy perils and the limits of sharing. However, there is a critical legal caveat regarding what you do with that footage. While recording is protected, posting the video online can violate privacy laws in many states if the faces and license plates of other people are not blurred. Sharing footage publicly without consent can lead to civil lawsuits that far exceed the cost of any traffic ticket. Professional analysts recommend using dash cam recordings strictly for legal protection and insurance documentation rather than social media content. Law 8. The DUI Evolution. Per se, THC limits. The eighth law represents a controversial but rapid change in how impaired driving is measured. As more states have legalized cannabis, lawmakers have moved to tighten DUI enforcement by adopting per se THC limits, similar to the 0.08 blood alcohol standard. In several states, if a blood test shows THC levels above a specific threshold, often 5 nanograms per milliliter, you can be charged with a DUI automatically. The lingering legacy of THC. The primary issue for drivers is that THC stays in the system long after the effects wear off. You could feel completely sober and drive perfectly, yet still test over the legal limit days after use. While some states allow you to argue a lack of impairment, these challenges are expensive, difficult, and not guaranteed. The current legal reality is that frequent users may test positive even when they are not impaired at all. From a risk management perspective, the only safe advice is to avoid driving for at least 24 hours after use, though even that may not be enough for some users to fall below the new legal threshold. Law 9. Targeted restrictions for teen drivers. The ninth law targets the riskiest demographic on the road by extending restrictions on teen drivers even after they receive a full license. In 2026, many states have implemented mandatory nighttime curfews for drivers under 18, typically between 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. There are exceptions for work, school, and emergencies, but teens are often required to carry physical proof of their destination. Furthermore, passenger restrictions have tightened. Some states now limit teen drivers to only one non-family passenger under 21. If a teen is caught violating these rules, the ticket often goes to the parents, and fines can easily exceed $300. Law 10. Liability in the age of autonomous vehicles. The final law affects everyone on the road, regardless of whether they own a high-tech car, clarifying liability for autonomous vehicle crashes. In 2026, new regulations specify that if you are hit by a self-driving vehicle operating in full autonomous mode, liability generally falls on the company that developed the system, not the person in the driver's seat. However, this protection only applies if the vehicle was truly in full autonomous mode. If the system issued warnings that the human driver ignored, responsibility shifts back to the driver. This makes documentation and police reports more critical than ever following an accident with an autonomous vehicle. Understanding these 10 laws is the only way to navigate the 2026 driving landscape safely and legally.